I was not a model student myself, unfortunately. When I came to college, I did struggle and I had those challenges. But I also found those people that were instrumental in helping to keep me engaged with my higher education journey.
I'm in it for the transformation that can take place, because when change happens, a ripple effect occurs, and it impacts families, communities, and future generations.
We want to see students come to our college and get the credential that they want and need to have to change their lives and their families' lives and their own trajectory.
For many, education's the bridge from, say, like their current state to their aspirational state. And I like to know that I had a hand in helping someone take a step towards, that future self.
Having AI at our disposal is all about meeting students where they are.
AI isn't about replacing the human side, but instead amplifying it.
It's able to take a lot of the redundancy out of the day-to-day of the admissions counselor work that a lot of time was ultimately dreaded.
That helps our team concentrate on complex problems when students call rather than answering simple questions.
I do what I do to open the doors of opportunities that may never have existed before, because those opportunities ultimately transform lives.
Visit element451.com and discover how a digital workforce can help empower your team to focus on what really matters.
That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to First Movers, a brand new pulse check series from Enrollify. I'm Rhea Vitalis.
And I'm Andrea Gilbert from Everspring.
In this series, we're sitting down with enrollment leaders who aren't waiting for answers. They're creating them.
These are the teams testing bold ideas, redefining ROI, and adapting in real time to a landscape that refuses to stand still.
Let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to our very first episode of First Movers, a brand new pulse check series from Enrollify, brought to you by Everspring. We're so excited to have Dave Hunt, Director of Enrollment Marketing from University of Kansas, on the show with us today. Everspring has worked with University of Kansas for over a decade. And the first time I met Dave, I remember really connecting on the art of storytelling in marketing. Andrea Gilbert is also joining us here today. Andrea is Everspring's Senior Vice President of Partner and Solutions Marketing. And one of my favorite facts about Andrea is that she cut her teeth in the admissions office of the Illinois Institute of Technology. So she brings a really well-rounded perspective on the opportunities and the headwinds that real teams are facing. And I'm Rhea Vitalis, your host. I lead the AI research we're doing here at Everspring to help bring the biggest performance trends to the teams navigating a whole lot of change. Dave, when we spoke earlier this year, you shared compelling strategies about how University of Kansas builds a differentiated value prop in a really crowded market. And since then, search behavior has evolved. We see ChatGPT and AI overviews and Google are changing the way that students get information. So how has your thinking about differentiation evolved? What matters now more than it did 12 months ago? And what, if anything, matters less?
I mean, differentiation is still going to be the name of the game, especially in higher ed, when the choices for a prospective student often come down to just a handful of factors. And I was thinking about this, and the internet has always been a place for people who have a question and want an answer. Pre the advent and implementation of AI, somebody would Google, they would get a list of websites, and then they would go to the website that had the most authoritative answer, scroll through the website to figure out the answer to their question. Even before AI, the concept of zero-click searches was already on the rise. And so they were trying to still find their answers just from the search results before even clicking it. So this is kind of the next evolution of that process. If we take a step back, the idea was, how do we differentiate our value proposition on our website? And to create content in a way where we will rank as high as we can in those search results so that we're the top click. Base level, that's what we're trying to do. And then you let the website do the work with with how it's designed, laid out, the user experience, to give them the answer, to provide that value proposition, to get them to take that action wherever they're at in the funnel. And the challenge that AI has come up with is that goal is still the same. You still want to provide that differentiated message to those various audiences and then get them to take that action. But now they're not going to your website and doing that process of evaluating what the answer is to their question. Now those large language models are doing it for them. It's literally doing the human part of evaluating the information and to come to the conclusion. And so, sadly, it's not necessarily a question that I have an answer for. I should probably just ask an AI tool to tell me the answer to this, which would be the full circle irony of it all. Because at the end of the day, what those models, the AI models are doing they're crawling the internet. I mean, they're just doing that, what used to be a human process, and they're just doing it for us. We still have to create that message and create the answer to the question done in a way where it's authoritative, to where the computer models are saying, this is the answer to that question. And this is honestly something that I haven't quite figured out, is how do we still take it to that next step of, all right, that we've given them the answer. Now I need them to, if they've only inquired, I need them to apply. They've been admitted, but we need them to put down their deposit, whatever that is. And I don't currently see that as being a part of that process in the models, or at least I haven't figured out how to do it. But I do think that that's going to be one of the challenges we have to look at and face and find a solution to. Is we've provided that authoritative answer. How do we still create action for the prospective student?
Yeah, attribution breaks down quite a bit when a lot of that discovery is happening so early in the journey. And that was definitely tied to the conversation we had earlier in the year too, was, building differentiated content and meeting students at different places. I think the idea of the funnel has collapsed to some degree. So how do you think about that? I mean, you've mentioned before that your team operates efficiently by creating assets that work across multiple channels, but with AI fragmenting where students are doing their research, how do you think about building content that performs across those different surfaces and even meeting students at different stages in their research process without overwhelming a small team?
Yeah, well, you leverage AI where you can, and where it makes sense to do. And that's not just, I will never say just ask AI to write me a 10 email drip series, right? Because they'll get it wrong half the time, or it'll pull data and stats. They're like, well, it's not quite relevant to this audience. AI is a tool to help you become more efficient, whether that be, hey, I need ideas. And with proper prompt engineering, we're just talking about email. We'll just use that as one example. And I think this is something that is portable across all different content types. Is to say, you could either I need inspiration. Use these sites as kind of your source material. I need inspiration on how I can create an email drip campaign that is for this off-target audience, and where I need them to take this action, and here are the stories that I want to be able to tell. And maybe it'll provide you that thing. Or you've already done all of that work, and you've written the content, but now I need to use AI to kind of take me down and to optimize it. And I'm painting really broad strokes with that. We could all use more resources, but how do we use the tools at our disposal to just take something that used to take a full day, and let's compress that down to really it's just half a day, because we had other tools to help us kind of speed up that process.
I think you brought up some really good points around, you can't just say, AI, do this thing for me. You really need to be focused in the prompt, be clear about who your audience is, have a specific focus. What is your content piece trying to do? And I think even the value prop work that your team is so grounded in becomes really important material for AI to be able to do that in a way that's effective and allows you to actually scale with quality.
Well, and the scaling, I think, is another part that I've given a lot of thought to and really encouraged my team to lean into. Is often we'll have a piece of content that maybe was originally designed for, let's say, as a YouTube video, for example, is long form content. And, with resources at a premium, it's often the easiest path is to just take that piece of content and let me just go ahead and place it in these other areas as is. But we also know that that does not perform as well, because a 2-minute YouTube video that if you put it exactly as is on Instagram is not going to perform as well. And I think that another area that AI has some real opportunity is to say, hey, here's my source material that I've put on YouTube. I want to take this piece of content and then recreate it for this channel, this channel, this channel, this channel, with this audience, this audience, this audience, and either provide me some guidance, or depending on the tools that you have at your disposal, literally you could have it, in many cases, modify this thing for me into what it needs to be for Instagram, or as a blog post, or whatever it may be. And instead of having to do all of that manually in the past, you already did the work to create that source material, the kind of real source of truth, so to speak. Now I just need to take this thing in its natural form, so to speak, and then just curate it for these other channels. Because I think that a lot of times the people will be concerned about AI is just have AI do it for me, like the whole thing. And I think I'm really passionate about making sure that it still needs to be something coming from us, because going back to the idea of storytelling, we know the story we want to tell, and we know the people that we have to tell those stories in a really authentic, meaningful, and impactful way. And so you really still have to start with us creating the thing, whatever the thing is, but it doesn't necessarily have to be us being the one to say, I just need to modify and take half a day to modify this thing for these other areas. And I think that that's an opportunity to, again, how to scale with limited resources.
Yeah. You started talking a little bit about the role that a website now plays in recruitment and discoverability. Andrea, I'd love to invite you into the conversation. Can you tell me about the work Everspring did with University of Kansas online MBA website? We led a complete overhaul of the site in April. And can you just walk us through how this changing student journey informed the content that students were looking for and what we really focused on building?
The April redesign really focused on depth, content that directly answers the questions that students are asking through AI. Differentiation today depends on being discoverable, right? And helpful when students ask questions, not just when they're searching. So for KU, for example, that means answering questions that might appear in AI-driven moments with clear, authentic answers. So questions like, why KU? Or is an online MBA worth it? This approach has measurable impact that we've been tracking over the last several months. So since our April launch, we've seen that the microsite generates about 42% on average more AI-driven traffic than some of the other KU domains that we've evaluated. And it's been cited in just over 120 AI overview results, nearly 3 times more than other KU domains. So this visibility proves that the high intent, the question-led content strategy builds discoverability and authority in this ever-changing AI era. And so it's reinforcing trust and clarity, authenticity, which all students want right now, and that the tone are truly key differentiators. So we also restructured how the information was organized to be more machine readable, so that when AI tools are crawling across the sites, the tools can find relevant content and surface it in the AI answers. So again, for KU specifically, Everspring focused on ongoing content refreshes, the SEO strategy, analytics, optimization, to ensure that we've got that visibility across all of the different research platforms. And the in-depth first approach is really validated by the performance. The online microsite now triggers AI overviews for 34% of its ranking keywords. And that's 74% higher than the School of Business as in general. So it's demonstrating how question-led, in-depth content improves that visibility and engagement. Another exciting example, if I can just quickly share, is a AI-focused content cluster around leadership. And so it's a high intent MBA topic, which many people are looking for. And it's driven about 5,300 organic clicks year to date and earned 28 AI style citations for searches such as characteristics of a leader and leadership style versus management style. These are very specific things that the students are looking for in their searches that with the content that was on the site before, it wasn't rising to the top. So scaling that content around intent driven themes, we were able to achieve research across the multitude of platforms that are out there, overextending those internal resources. And the same approach then was carried into social and email and other channels, the things, Dave, that you were just talking about related to focus from your team. The messaging is now much more conversational and human. It's supported by the interactive tools like live chat and appointment scheduling. So thinking about this with a holistic approach instead of just making changes to a website or just making changes to social, it has to be a fully integrated approach. But the website has proven that those updates are paying it forward.
One of the things we talk a lot about is how critical the technical optimization is of the site so that a machine can crawl it and understand what content is on the page and how that content is organized and clustered. And that as students are, people in general, are searching, long tail keywords, which really just means a full paragraph of a very personalized search. The way that you organize and structure your content plays such an important role in the machines understanding how content is interconnected.
That kind of hidden behind the scenes part of it, that technical optimization element, which people just don't, the average person who doesn't do it on a day-to-day basis either is aware of or just doesn't understand how it works. I really view it as one of my key roles in working with our partners around the university to really explain in depth that the content has to be structured in particular ways so that the story that we're trying to tell can actually get out there to the people that we're trying to reach. And so, and the people within their individual units, whether you're talking about the School of Business or, the admissions team, whatever it is, they know their stories better than anybody. They know their stories better than I can tell it because they live it day to day in their kind of niche area of the university. And so, and they're passionate about that, rightfully so. They have good stories to tell. And so what I try to do is to really say, I want to help tell your story. And here's how we can do that on the website. And it needs to be structured this particular way, because otherwise we're going to just tell the story. Nobody's going to hear it. And so I was sitting here, I just thought of this analogy of it's almost like having, a really nice high-end sports car that on the outside, you could have everything look great. And it's just pristine and it's telling a particular story. But if you open the hood and I don't know enough about cars to really take this analogy all the way, but if it's a piece of junk on the inside, well, you don't really have a sports car, do you? You just have something that looks great on the outside. And so it's how do you do both of those elements together? That's when you really kind of find the magic from a marketing perspective and from a storytelling perspective of you have a great story to tell and people will hear it.
There's so much happening in the market right now. Andrea, you mentioned some of this, but what we're seeing on average is that organic searches that lead to a university program website are being intercepted about a third of the time by these AI summaries. So a student searches, what salary can I expect if I get an MBA? Or what's the difference between an online MBA and an executive MBA? And an AI summary appears on top, and it sits above your organic rankings that you've worked so hard for. It sometimes sits above paid listings. And so it's this massive interception point. And Andrea, you shared about some of the outcomes that KU's online MBA website has been able to drive. The website's showing up in these AI summaries 4 times more often than we see from other university websites nationally. So when you were rebuilding the site, were you anticipating this kind of performance from AI platforms?
We had a bit of a roadmap on how to build out based on historical performance and what we were seeing. So, the focus on that content development and the architecture were top priority. We know that students are increasingly self-directed in this search and this decision-making process. So we knew we needed to understand what the intent of their searches were and building accordingly. It is not a copy and paste that we build every single website the same, because the behavior of the students is different. While there are similarities and there are personas that fit an MBA program from one institution to another, the students are different and the intent is different. And so we really needed to understand, specific to KU, what questions are students asking and why are they asking it? And then we work to design the content to answer those questions in a conversational and clear way. So, we have that roadmap to start, but it becomes a very personalized process. And in the end, we watch how that performance shifts, and we tweak and we adjust and we change, as time goes on from the continued learnings. And so we've already seen increases in cited URLs. We've seen a 42% lift in the AI-driven traffic by applying that clear and intent-based content and architecture. And the takeaway is simple. We needed to focus on clarity, structure, and authority rather than volume and performance. And over time, it'll compound. And that's exactly what we've seen. We continue to see nearly about 40% year-over-year increase in traffic to the microsite. So that's just one data point that tells us it's working. But we then need to follow that student through conversion to make sure it's keeping them engaged.
I think that digital marketing and the internet for marketers and communicators, we one thing we loved about it was the ability to directly say, I'm going to provide you a message and lead directly to action. Before the internet, marketing was all paid media, earned media, and we're going to provide impressions. We're going to try to increase both the awareness and the affinity. And by doing that and providing the right message, somebody will then take the action we need them to because they were influenced by the marketing that was done previous. And I'm as we're talking through this, and I'm thinking about the rise, the kind of incremental and probably exponential rise of zero-click activity. I almost wonder if search is kind of starting to evolve into, in this flywheel world where we're kind of going back to where we started. I wonder if it's starting to evolve back to now it's going to be a place where we want to almost like earned media, where we have done some work to earn being the one to provide the answer, the curated answer that we want to provide. And they may not take action, but we have provided them that impression and we have steered their view of our brand and our offering or our value proposition in a way to where the action that they take may not happen right then, which is what, of course, what every marketer wants is take the action right then. But it's more about how do we influence their activity over time, and then they take that action later on. So I don't know, as we were talking in my head, I go, I wonder if search is kind of becoming the new earned media in a way.
Here's a quick word from our sponsor. Southeast Missouri State University needed to launch more targeted campaigns faster, yet they were bogged down by manual campaign builds, slow approvals, and vendor overload. With Element 451, they eliminated 5 vendor tools and gained marketing superpowers in one platform. They saw a 13% increase in applications, processed applications within 2 days, and achieved 33 to 35% email open rates. The impact: personalized, automated campaigns running at scale without the drag. Ready to turn your next campaign around in hours, not weeks? Try an agent today at element451.com/agents.
It all is getting thrown up in the air and readjusted for sure. We know that the big companies are going to want to make their money. So they have to figure out how to play nice with the LLMs and, that organic piece. But in the meantime, we have to make sure you're showing up where you need to show up and get in front of the students so we can build that funnel. But Total alignment. Agree.
Yeah.
And tomorrow it'll be different. So we'll have to regroup tomorrow because it'll.
So you're telling me that you don't think that Google's going to do a 180 and decide, you know what, we don't need to make as much money now? I thought for sure that's the direction we were going, but it's fine.
Yeah. I wish that were the case because you could reallocate those funds to the 100 other priorities you have, right?
I think that ties, though, to one of the trends that we've seen this year, both within University of Kansas's online MBA, but other programs, is the rise in stealth apps. And one of our hypotheses is that students are coming into admissions teams more informed with a different set of questions. And they're doing a lot of that early research that used to be a little bit more trackable on their own and in a zero-click environment or off-channel. And even when they are using ChatGPT, only a fraction of the time are they clicking through from ChatGPT to the website where that action is tracked. So often that research is just happening in a single container. And then when they come in, you're not entirely sure where or how or what they've already done. Have you heard anything from admissions teams around different types of questions that they're getting or the speed of applicants when they do come in and have a conversation that clarifies questions? Have you noticed any changes on the admission side?
There's definitely, so we like to say that every class is different. And I think, though, that to your earlier point of like the funnel is collapsing in a way or changing, I think is happening more rapidly. I think about a couple things. One, a lot of institutions are starting to implement AI as a way to make faster decisions in the admissions process. And in a world where we're talking, especially with traditional undergraduate students, those that are coming out of high school, obviously for any of your adult learners that are maybe looking at graduate online programs, it's going to be a little bit different. Proud millennial here. And that's a whole other podcast for a different day if you just want to talk about Dave as a millennial, but we'll keep it to the side for now. But this is a traditional freshmen have grown up in the kind of Amazonification of the world. And I think that's part of the allure of an AI tool, because they don't have to do a Google search and then go and find the answer. They just get the answer handed right to them. But I think that they expect that to some degree with almost everything in the world. So when they apply to a school, they want to know right away, basically, did I get it? And so that kind of manual process from the past for a lot of schools, not every school, but for a lot of schools, we have to review the transcript, and it takes a person to evaluate what's going on, that there are tools out there now to be able to make rapid decisions and let a student know. And the speed to lead, the speed to admit matters in their decision process, but it's not the only thing. And so when we talk about how are prospective students' behaviors changing, I agree. In the rise of stealth apps and how people are doing their college search and evaluation before even applying, but we're even seeing it after that. In the last couple of years in particular, we have seen change in behavior with how students come to visit campus. And again, for on-ground programs, the campus visit matters. I mean, they really want to know what's the environment like. Does this feel like home for me? And it was always in the past a pre-application part of the process. You'd come as a junior or early in your senior year, evaluate, is this even a place that I want to apply? And it's starting to shift to actually it's a post-admit where they're going to come, or even we saw this last year there are students who are using the orientation as a final kind of evaluation tool, which was always kind of wild because for most schools, you had to put down actual dollars, but to even get into orientation. So you're committing a certain amount of money to still be in your evaluation process. And so, I think that also means that for us as an institution and for every institution, it means we have to, in an industry that is so traditional, he says with a smile on his face, we have to learn how to evolve quickly. Because they're evolving on their own, and we need to meet them where they are. And so I think that's a challenge many of us face, but we need to really take on that challenge head on and find solutions quickly. Otherwise, we'll be left in the dust.
That's such poignant, important advice of just being willing to adapt fast and evolving with the student and really understanding behaviors, having conversations, looking at how the experience is different, even the order of the experience is different, and how those experiences need to meet students. Do you have any other advice that you would impart on other marketing or enrollment leaders right now?
Yeah, I think one thing I'll say is when you look at institutions in the kind of digital transformation that the industry has gone through in the last 20, 30 years or so, that the ones that you look at now as you look at as exemplars, and I love the University of Kansas, and I think we do amazing things. But I'm going to use some other institutions as examples. When you look at Southern New Hampshire University, when you look at what Arizona State, during my time there, is you and there's many more examples than that. But and even on a smaller scale, when I worked at Rockhurst University, we really evaluated and looked at other smaller regional institutions that had enrollment success and to try to evaluate what they did. And all of them were willing to buck the trend and try something totally new and to kind of reimagine what their place in higher ed was and what they thought their institution could be for students, and all in very different ways. It took a level of initiative and in some ways bravery to say, we're going to do this differently, that we're going to really try something different. And so now that's at an institutional level. For marketing teams, and I'll bring this back down to KU, is when I started in 2024, as this was a brand new department in enrollment marketing, I kind of came in and we could have just kept doing things the exact same way we've always done. That probably would have been easier if I'm being honest, right? But we also knew that the landscape and our markets were changing underneath us, and so really wanted to and did evaluate where are there opportunities for us to do this differently. I don't want to say better, just differently, to really, again, go back to that idea of meeting prospective students where they are at, and to be bold enough to say, we're going to do this differently, and to craft a plan and a strategy that you believe in. And every strategy needs to evolve and change as you go along, as you see what is working and what isn't working. So I'm not saying create a strategy and then just like dig your heels in. Don't do that. But to commit to a strategy you believe is going to work, and to really communicate the why of it all to your partners. Because when you do something new and different, change is hard, right? And so how do you kind of bring everybody else along with you and really walk through, this is what we're trying to accomplish, this is why we're doing this. Even if you're just running the enrollment marketing team, everybody has the opportunity to lead their respective institution into the future in their own way. Just bring everybody with you, right? Don't do it and just off in your own area. Like, make sure that you kind of socialize it and really explain the why behind it all, because I think that helps with buy-in. And it will help it be more successful in the long run.
Dave, if I can riff off of that for a second, I think that oftentimes people are nervous to make change because we keep adding, let's just try this, let's try this, let's do this. And we don't really ever take a step back and say, well, what are we going to stop doing? What are we going to maybe take a risk and reallocate those funds to do something else? So what, taking that a step further on, take that risk and try something, how do they build that confidence? I think a lot of institutions and marketing departments and admission offices are used to doing things a certain way. If we think about the undergrad space, you got to buy those names to send them the direct mail and get in front of them on email. And then on the grad side, we're seeing the behavior that we've seen for over a decade in the traditional undergrad population. Those stealth apps that we're seeing now on the grad side, we saw that a decade ago, right? On undergrad, where they just came blindly in and nobody knew where they came from, didn't know how they found out about us. We're seeing that now on the grad side. But how do we help change that behavior, to try new things, to take those risks? This AI thing is scary for many institutions. So what would your advice be as somebody who's sitting in this and going through it and seeing positive results from taking those risks?
I think too that there's you have an opportunity with the tools that we have now to be able to react to a changing market and a changing industry quickly. And I was just thinking about this earlier today, that when we talk about stealth apps, traditionally that's they applied and we never heard about them and they're going through the process. We also can see this with people students who fill out their FAFSA application and indicate they're interested in KU. And they were never on our radar before that. But now they're giving us certain markers that are telling us a lot about them instantaneously, that we have the tools to be able to react to and provide them the marketing and the messaging to provide them the information that they are looking for to help in their decision. And so I think that in the past, it was often you knew that something like that was happening, but you just didn't really have the ability to do anything about it, right? Because all right, well, we got to think about an entire campaign and we got to put all here, we got to go get some content, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas now I think that we have the ability to say, hey, we've seen an increase in stealth apps coming from the FAFSA. Let's take those students and craft a campaign using AI to help accelerate the process and get them the messages they need to help in their decision-making process. And that's just kind of one example. And so I think it's just about in a world where we all have way too much to do all the time, is to identify and be kind of aware of when an opportunity presents itself, that that it's actually imperative to jump on that opportunity, and not in a way where you have to just set everything else aside. But how do we incorporate it into what we're already doing and leverage the tools that we have to act on that? And so, and that sounds, I'm making it sound way easier than it really is. But I think that as we continue to get more and more competitive, and as the student population continues to shrink over the years, as we move forward in this demographic cliff that we've talked about for years, is the ones who will excel, similar to the examples I provided, are the ones who are going to find a different and better way to react to what's in front of them. And so going back to, the entire conversation is kind of centered around AI, is to always kind of take a moment and remember that you actually do have the ability now to be able to implement things quickly when an opportunity presents itself.
What are you watching most closely over the next 6 to 12 months? And maybe that's even too far out given how fast things change. But what's either the trend or shift that keeps you up at night, or one that you're really excited about in the near future?
So never waste an opportunity to promote something when you're a marketer, right? KU is starting to lean into competency-based education with our JHEC Flex program. And I do think that is recognizing that the educational experience that students are interested in continues to evolve. And then, not saying that it's more about providing options. I think everybody learns in a different way and wants to be able to go through their academic experience and academic journey in different ways. And so, and competency-based education is not anything new, but I think that, again, going back to how do we kind of find where we fit into that and provide our students, it is an opportunity. And I do think that it fits into going back to what our various audiences are used to. Competency-based education is it's not about, I'm going to take these 2 classes for these 12 weeks in that very traditional model. You get to you go truly at your own pace, and you're picking how many instead of a class, it's a competency, and you're meant to demonstrate that you have mastered a particular topic or concept. There are people at KU who will explain that way better than I just did. That's kind of like the true layman's perspective on it. But to give them, I'm really fascinated to see how an institution like KU, a tier 1 research institution, bringing this on board and providing this as a different modality of what is the student experience? How much do they gravitate to it? What's their experience? How do we, again, kind of adjust and evolve as we learn what we're hearing from students? And does it show that we need to continue to evolve how we are providing an educational experience? My assumption is that the answer is probably going to be yes. Again, knowing what we know about how the world's changing around us. But that's something that's really on my mind right now for obvious reasons, since I'm directly involved in it. But I also am curious, not just for us, but also what does it tell us about looking forward 5 years down the road of like, what is it telling us that we need to start building toward now, rather than waiting and reacting, 5-10 years later.
I love the continuation of the student journey to ultimately what their experience is in the programs, and how does that experience tie into their unique goals and needs and where they're at in their careers or learning journey. And, taking the conversation from the discovery of the program and the choice of the program to ultimately, choice within the program. So I like that. Bringing that full circle. Andrea, what are your thoughts?
In my 25 plus years in higher ed, there's never a thing that lets me sleep well at night because it is ever changing. But we have come so far. I mean, it was when I was at IIT and I started my career in higher ed, we put one packet in the mail and we kept our fingers crossed that the students would enroll, and they did. And now we know that AI's growing role in the personalization process of the student journey is, I think, what the next major shift is. We have been talking a lot about being visible and getting that content out there, but visibility, I think, is going to give way to relevance. Making the student interaction really feel one-to-one. And I think it ties directly to what you're talking about in that modality continuing to shift in that experience. It's because what they want, it's what they need, it's what they're looking for in their higher ed experience. So for our partnership with KU and Everspring, I think that means that we're continuing to blend our data and our storytelling and the empathy on how we best optimize how AI is interpreting and surfaces that content to the students. But I think in general, for others listening, the goal really is to create a digital experience that feels deeply human, even as they're increasingly mediated by different intelligent systems, which is a challenge. I mean, every era that we go through in higher ed to kind of pull higher ed into the modern day Amazon approach or Starbucks approach ever more than it is now.
Thanks, Dave, for joining us, and thanks anyone for tuning in to this first episode of First Movers. We are excited to bring these important conversations to the forefront and show you what other university leaders are doing that works, what bold ideas they're trying, and navigate a whole lot of change together. Thanks for joining.
The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.